are these people?
There's been a writer's strike, right? That just recently went down, right? And it shut down most of the comedy night shows, right? If you can call them that. So we'll get into it a bit. Late night shows to shut down immediately after Writers Guild strike called Update. This is by Peter White over at Deadline. So nightly talk shows, including The Late Show with Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel Live, and The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon are set to go dark starting on Tuesday after writers agree to strike. Late Night with Seth Meyers and The Daily Show, which had correspondent Dulce Sloan host this week, also will be hit. The Late Show with Jimmy Kimmel, The Tonight Show, and Late Night will officially be in reruns now, waiting on what Comedy Central will do with The Daily Show. So apparently gut-filled to remain on Fox despite strike. Weekly shows as Saturday Night Live and Last Week Tonight with John Oliver will be similarly impacted. The two HBO shows will shut down, although a final decision on SNL expected to come later in the week. SNL has officially canceled this week's show, which is supposed to be hosted by Pete Davidson. Repeats of the late night program will air until further notice. Colbert was set to have Priyanka Chopra Jonas and Cheetah Rivera on Tuesday's show, with Chris Hayes, Zach Cherry, Michael J. Fox, and Shonda Rhimes lined up later in the week. Fallon was set with Ken Jeong, and Emma Chamberlain on Tuesday, with the likes of Jennifer Lopez, J.J. Watt, Elle Fanning, and Bowen Yang among guests for later in the week. Kimmel was welcoming Dr. Phil, Gina Rodriguez, and the Pixies on Tuesday, with Melissa McCarthy, Will Poulter, Gervais, Anthony Carrigan, and Smashing Pumpkins set for later in the week. And The Daily Show was set to welcome authors Vashti Harrison and Jason Reynolds and former NFL All-Pro Brandon Marshall. Seth Meyers, speaking on Late Night this afternoon, said, "I love writing. I love writing for TV. I love writing the show. I love that we get to come in with an idea for what we get to do every day, and we get to work on it all afternoon. And then I have the pleasure of coming out here. No one is entitled to a job in show business. For those people who have a job, they are entitled to fair compensation. They are entitled to make a living. And I think it's a very reasonable demand that's being set out by the Guild, and I support those demands." Davidson said that Davidson was set for SNL. I hear that there are a number of possibilities for the Lorne Michaels created show if there is a strike, and then a decision is set to meet closer to showtime.
Now we know it's been canceled.
Yep. Speaking on The Tonight Show, Davis joked that he was taking it personally. "It sucked because it just feeds my weird story that I have in my head. Like, of course that would happen to me." Two of the nightly, which is so narcissistic, Pete. Two of the nightly hosts, Kimmel and Colbert, went through the situation in 07 and 08, if we remember that writer's strike. The latter is the host of the Colbert Report. Myers was at Saturday Night Live during the last strike, and Oliver was at the Daily Show. Mayer's Real Time was also hit, with its season finale replaced by a rerun. One of the issues in this year's negotiation between the Writers Guild and the studios is also, in fact, surrounding late night shows on streaming. As it stands, writers who work on comedy variety programs made for new media, such as Peacock's The Amber Ruffin Show, do not qualify for NBA minimums, something the WGA has been fighting for. So we'll get more into that in a bit. Late night showrunners have told Deadline they will stay in touch with each other as the strike progresses to give a unified approach on the situation, something that didn't happen in 07-08. "I have been and will continue to talk to the other shows to see what they're up to," one showrunner said. "We've got to support the writers. Our writers are amazing. That said, the rest of the staff is amazing, and I don't want to see anybody lose their job or lose a paycheck. What's the happy medium there? Figuring that out has not been easy." One SNL star told Dateline, "We had to think about our crew too. I absolutely support the writers, and I want the writers to get what they deserve and need, but I don't want our crew to be out of work. We can't make this art without each other." So here's Jimmy Fallon, right? And they asked him, this was at the Met Gala, right? And they asked a ton of celebrities about this, but I feel like his is the most pertinent of the ones I found. So we're going to do that just in case Variety wants to come after us.
I wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for my writers, and I support them all the way. They got to have a fair contract, and they got a lot of stuff to iron out, and hopefully they get it done.
If there is a strike, do you go dark?
If there's a strike, yeah, I think we will. Yeah, I think we'll go dark. Whatever I can do to support the guild. I am actually in the Writers Guild as well, so yeah, I couldn't do the show without them, and I support my whole staff.
So couldn't do his show without them.
I wouldn't have.
Next, please. And here's what is Seth Meyers, right?
Yeah, that's Seth Meyers.
I'm good at one thing, which is writing. And I love writing so much. I really do. And incredibly grateful that there are negotiators for both sides sitting and talking. I'm incredibly hopeful that they can come to an agreement. I also feel very strongly that what the writers are asking for is not unreasonable. And as a proud member of the Guild, I'm very grateful that there's an organization that looks out for the best interests of writers. So if you don't see me here next week, know that it is something that is not done lightly, and that I will be heartbroken to miss you as well. And let's just keep our you-know-whats and see me when you see me.
So, no. Here.
I'm good at one thing.
No. So here's Wanda Sykes out there on the picket line, right? I guess it's a line. Here we go. But in response to that Jimmy Fallon clip, we have Afeni. Where was all this support for the rail workers? How many, quote, A-list celebs did you see talking about the train derailments that could be avoided if workers were treated better and staffed at higher level? Sabby Sabs, yep, they're vocal about the writer's strike, but it hurts them financially. No writers, no shows or movies. Jax Page, they should shut down forever. This is a sad and tired format. I only know a few people that watch this drivel, and they are in their 70s. Thoughts so far, Care Bear?
I mean, couldn't have said it better myself. But I think that kind of goes to show, I think that's just human nature, that things, you don't care about things, or you don't think about things in a certain way unless it affects you personally. Right. So obviously, like, you know, the writers, you know, I think people don't talk about, you know, obviously we talked about the actors and all, and directors and all that kind of stuff as far as media production like this, but you know, the people who work behind the scenes, the writers, you know, the makeup artists, all those that kind of create the characters, you know, they often go unnoticed with no credit at all. And yeah, I do respect, you know, a lot of these celebrities standing in solidarity in terms of the people who essentially, you know, give them their jobs. So yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, and I applaud in that way, you know, these celebrities for that. That aside, as Afeni and Sabby correctly mentioned, you know, they're doing this in terms of their class and their position. You know, where were they, as they said,
with
for the
Amazon
railroad or Amazon
railroad,
or anyone regarding or anyone within the working class? We rarely see instances where, like, maybe with a few exceptions, like Danny DeVito, like, is one that I can think off the top of my head that actually calls out the working class on Twitter. But for the most part, radio silence on any of those issues, and because they live in a bubble in of themselves,
so
that they don't need to care or focus about these things or focus about the working class.
John Quealy over at Common Dreams does focus on this kind of stuff. He writes, no other choice. TV and film writers strike to fight Hollywood greed. The companies have broken this business. They have taken so much from the very people, the writers, who have made them wealthy. So this goes into a bit more about what's actually happening with the strikers, you know, as opposed to the other article. So unionized film and television writers are on strike Tuesday after a midnight deadline came without a deal with executives of the major producers and streaming giants in Hollywood. Negotiating committee representing both the East and West Coast branches of the Writers Guild of America said in a statement that the strike would be in effect as of 12:01 a.m. and that members who voted last month to authorize a strike if one became necessary would be on the picketing line beginning Tuesday afternoon in both LA and New York. Though we negotiated intent on making a fair deal, and though your strike vote gave us the leverage to make some gains, the studio's response to our proposals have been wholly insufficient given the existential crisis writers are facing. The WGA said in a statement the company's behavior has created a gig economy inside a union workforce, and their immovable stance in this negotiation has betrayed a commitment to further devaluing the profession of writing. We had hoped to do this through reasonable conversation. Now we will do it through struggles, says the WGA. At issues are pay scales, residual fees, and base employment guarantees from producers for writers working in the era of online streaming and the new distribution models created by giants like Disney, Netflix, Apple, Amazon, NBC Universal, Paramount, Sony, and Discover Warner, some of the largest and most profitable companies in the entertainment industry, under the umbrella of the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. If they could do without us, they would, said television writer David Slack in support of the union. If they could break us up, they would. They can't. They won't. According to the LA Times, although streaming has been a boon for television, it's been upended how writers are compensated. Writers say that they work longer hours for less pay, and they no longer can rely on a steady stream of residual income they used to get in the days of broadcast TV when successful shows lived on for years in syndicated reruns or the once lucrative home video market. So the median weekly pay for writers producers declined 23% over the last decade when adjusting for inflation. According to WGA survey, when accounting for inflation, screenwriter pay declined 14% in the last 5 years. The WGA said because of the producer's unwillingness to budge on key demands, we must now exert the maximum leverage possible to get a fair contract by withholding our labor. David Goodman, co-chair of the negotiating committee, told the LA Times that the need for a strike became increasingly evident over recent days of bargaining. It was really very clear that the companies were unwilling to move on many of the important issues we raised, Goodman said. They kept wanting us to give up things that we just wanted to talk about, and so as a result, we realized that they didn't want to make a deal. The union said the exploitation they suffer as writers is clear to see, but that it will not be tolerated any longer by an industry that disregards the key role they play in creating the shows and movies that audiences pay to enjoy. Here is what all writers know. The company have broken this business. The WGA committee said they have taken so much from the very people, the writers who made them wealthy, but what they cannot take from us is each other, our solidarity, our mutual commitment to save ourselves and this profession that we love. We had hoped to do this through reasonable conversation, the statement continued. Now we will do it through struggle for the sake of our present and our future. We have been given no other choice. We had hoped to do this through reasonable conversation, the statement continued. Now we will do it through struggle for the sake of our present and our future. We have been given no choice. Just wanted to double read that. But anything to add?
I mean, we talk about labor a lot here, and this kind of goes in line with that. The only difference is this deals with celebrities. That's really the only difference.
Well, and I've seen some people talk about how this is like, well, these people already make a ton of money, and these people blah blah blah. Yeah, but like solidarity anyway. Like
no, and actually no, writers don't make a lot of money. So I would say it depends on the show. Some do, but I think it's but I think it's just I think definitely for the larger shows, but I think as they said, and it makes a lot of sense to me, like back in the day before streaming, you actually like TV seasons. Like you can pretty much rely basically from September to like May, June to have like a season consisting of like a drama or something like a weekly show. Like going on for like 20 or so episodes that you write in advance, within that time frame. And now with streaming, we don't have the idea of that kind of season mentality anymore.
Or the fact
Like,
that syndication isn't a thing. If a
Right.
show is made at Netflix, like, it's not going to be made. It's not going to be made like with, the same, like, it's not going to go over to Hulu suddenly,
Right. So, but I think it's the idea of, it's now shows you can pretty much package. Okay, so I'll just kind of continue talking while Reef is gone. But yeah, so basically it's the idea of shows now, like on streaming services, you can basically put out a season at a time, and it doesn't have to be like 20 episodes. It can be as low as 6, 10, depending. And so writers are not necessarily making that much, and they're required, depending on the show, to put out episodes maybe a lot sooner, or like in a lot faster turnaround than they had like maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
So really it's the idea, depending on the show, especially if it's like, I'm thinking like maybe not Game of Thrones, that just came into my head, but
Mhm.
I honestly, I really don't watch any like streaming shows now. Honestly, I don't really watch TV, but you can have a season of shows packaged basically any time of the year that you want. So it's more frequently, with probably twice as much input on the writer's end to write something with a faster turnaround than it's ever been, and not necessarily getting compensated accordingly. That makes a whole lot of sense to me. And people in the chat said, and you said it in the articles, that the last time that writers went on strike was 2008. That was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed in the media sphere since then. So you can imagine how shit. And I wish we had someone who can talk about this a little bit more, who kind of understands this. But I can imagine like a writer's wage is going to be shit if they're now striking after 15 years. So, and then there's a lot more that goes into making shows now that are not necessarily guaranteed like a season, depending on the show, like I'll say 20 episodes or upwards of that. And maybe you can have like a couple of seasons within a calendar year, maybe more, depending on the show. So you're asking writers to write more for essentially less. Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense to me that they'll strike now.
Yeah, I mean, it's funky for sure. Like, we'll keep an eye on that.